Welcome to the Behind the Curtain podcast, your real-world guide to real estate investment and property management.
In this episode, we will be discussing rental scams and a recent event that made local headlines. In Neighborhood Chat, we will be hearing more funny news of the strange but true. And finally, Brett and Glenn discuss how they are currently assisting investors with tenant-occupied property to sell their homes while property values are at an all-time high.
Hi, I'm Richard Roy. I'm usually behind the scenes of the podcast, recording, producing, and getting the show ready to be published. But today I'm behind the mic alongside Aaron and Alex. Today we'll be talking about a news story that I saw recently. I think it was at the beginning of April. And the Shelby County Sheriff's Department had indicated that 5 or more people had each been caught up in a rental scam, and each had been scammed out of many thousands of dollars. This was a case where deceptive ads had been placed on Facebook Marketplace. In one of the cases, a woman said she found the perfect house, and when she contacted the person behind the ad, the man claimed to be the owner of the home. Well, she paid this man $1,700 through an app. I'm guessing it was something like Venmo, maybe PayPal. The man gave her a code for the lockbox on the house, but it later transpired that he was not the owner of the home. This reminded me of a story from about 10 years ago where a similar situation happened to Enterprise Property Management. I'm sure you remember this, Aaron, but I recall a similar situation where the scammer used one of your property's details to post an ad online, and then I think didn't the scammer take a deposit from the man that responded and told him to hire a locksmith to get into the property? Do you remember more of the details and how you came to find out that someone was squatting there?
It was really super strange. We had gone to the property to show it one day, and the sign was missing from the yard, which is not uncommon. For whatever reason, we lose for rent signs often, and so the property, we tried to enter the property. Our keys wouldn't work. I remember receiving the phone call, calling our locksmith. The locksmith went to the property and found that there was someone that had moved into the property, and he had only moved in just a little bit, which seemed very, very suspicious at the time. He had moved in a few boxes, maybe an air mattress, things like that. It was almost like he was, crashing at a friend's apartment or something, just temporarily. And we asked him, why he was there. And he said that he had signed a lease with a man, and he had moved in and it was his house. And it was in the lease that he should change the locks. Basically said that the old landlord had not changed the locks yet, and the landlord said that he would give him a credit for changing those locks. So he went ahead and had a locksmith pick the locks. He showed us a receipt for that. We actually called that locksmith, and it just became a whole big mess just right from the very beginning.
So they found the right person to scam, certainly.
They really did, yeah. But do you want to discuss where the property was discovered?
Go on in.
Okay, Craigslist.
Yeah.
So I find that Craigslist is good for a couple of different things. It's great for reselling children's furniture. Okay. It is great for reselling a car that nobody else is going to buy, right? Does it drive? Yes. Would you take anybody out on a date in it? Absolutely not. Some 16-year-old is just going to love this old Camry or whatever, But what we found in that very moment, that was the decision day for us to completely stop using Craigslist to market any of our for-lease properties, vacant properties. All that to say, Craigslist scams have been around for a long time. All of us know when you say Craigslist scam, we all know what we're talking about. Someone has been affected in your world by a Craigslist scam, and this fellow claims to have been fallen prey to one.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Craigslist itself isn't bad, but it is just one notice board that anybody can pin anything they like and put a message out there.
Right.
So people good and bad at doing business, whether it's legit or not.
Let me introduce our leasing assistant, Alex Etchison.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Alex decided to come up here with us and talk a little bit about what his experiences have been with scams. And so, Alex, this situation that we're talking about, it happened a long time ago, like 2008, right. 2007, something like that. You've not been with us, but you've been with us for 3 years, I think now?
Going on 3, yeah.
Yeah, going on 3 years. And it's been excellent having you here. Just for the sake of for our listeners, how old are you, Alex?
That's turned 29 in April, so 27th.
29 years old. I'm in my mid 40s. Okay, so what's great about having Alex, with the team is that he has grown up with the internet. Obviously, we use the internet for all of our marketing. There is no marketing that we do outside of internet marketing, and so Alex is very astute when it comes to operating the internet marketing side of our leasing program. We've not been on Craigslist now for about 13 years. Are you still seeing Craigslist scams happen where people are saying that they're finding our properties?
Yeah, absolutely. People are still taking our information, putting it on Craigslist, using their own contact information and coming back to us with it. And, always do your research, always be on, if it's too good to be true, most likely it probably is.
Right.
So always go by that and do as much research as you can with those kind of situations, because the people are still out there. Even if you're not posting on there like we don't anymore, they're still creating those ads without our knowledge.
Yeah, and one of the things we've discussed in the past, because my history with Aaron is we've worked together for about just over 20 years, is it? And, many of the marketing things that I've done for the company have resulted in making adjustments so that we reduce or essentially indemnify ourselves against these scams. As the signs seem to be highly valuable and people steal them all the time, we're out in the neighborhoods on a regular basis. And, just as you're out showing a house, you're passing by another one and you look and the sign's gone. Or even worse, the sign's there, but it's been torn up. So leaving evidence at the property that it is an enterprise property, making it known as soon as that property becomes vacant, helps deter people should they hire a locksmith and get inside the property. Once they're in the property, there is evidence that it is an enterprise property management property.
Yeah, I think to your point, and then I want Alex to speak on this. Alex is always driving and looking for signs,
right,
and making
absolutely.
sure. Yeah, we do sign checks, is what we call them. So probably, thinking 13 years ago, the first step that con artist did was probably to remove the sign from the property. And then my understanding too in that specific Craigslist scam is that it happened very quickly. His Craigslist listing was up for maybe 48, 72 hours. And so by the time that this gentleman, and we called the police, right? We did everything we could to try to figure out what was going on. He spoke to the police. He ended up speaking to the news, a news station here in Memphis, and he relayed his whole story. It was this man's 15 minutes of fame. Well, he had about 60 seconds of fame, and which reran, several times on the local news. But he very, very tearfully explained his situation and his side of it. So, we have no reason to believe that he was not being honest in how he was defrauded of his money. We never found, or he never found the person that stole his money. He never got it back. It is a classic, guys, this is not an urban legend.
Right.
These people will take your money and you'll never hear from them again. Mm-hmm. You were going to say?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, it's really suspicious when they're trying to use apps to get you to pay money for it. Always be suspicious of that, and do research constantly about what you're getting into, because it is, again, if it's too good to be true, it most likely is. You gotta figure out do they actually own the property. You can do research online for free to figure out who owns property and make sure that everybody is doing what they're saying they're doing, and making sure it's through the right people. Always question everything when it comes to where you're going to be living and what you're dealing with as far as those kind of situations go. As far about the signs and everything, we had calls recently where I kept getting calls on this house. I'm like, that's not one of our properties. It was really kind of confusing. It was kind of close to one of our other ones. So, maybe they got the wrong address. So I finally got time to go out there and try to find this random sign that was in this random yard. And by the time I got to it, it was torn up and messed up, taken out of someone's yard, but it was near where they said it was, but it was not one of our properties. So somebody had taken a sign from one of our properties and put it into another one, which created a kind of an issue for us because we kept getting calls that were backing up our own line system for the actual properties we're trying to get rented.
And do you know if they ever found, like, did you see anything online for that property? They were just calling off of the sign? Just
calling off the sign. Nothing that I could find otherwise. So it could just been just teenagers picking up a sign and moving it to another yard for whatever prank or whatever. But either way, it's still causing a lot of confusion for a lot of people seeing the sign and for us on the other end.
It is really funny when that happens. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years, and every single year, somebody steals a sign and puts it in somebody else's yard, and I don't know, it's crazy. But yeah, that's silliness, and we're often called. It's not just signs, but we're often called about other people's listings. Mm-hmm. But what Alex said is true. I mean, let's just assume for a moment that out of the 10 mistaken calls that you receive per month on properties that we don't manage, that people are just confused, right? Yeah. As to what's going on. We're in a bit of a housing crisis right now at the end of COVID, and rents are going up. People are shocked at how much these properties are renting for.
Sure, yeah.
And I am too, to be honest. COVID has basically eliminated so much product. There's just not the houses out there to be found anymore. They've all gone up in price, and I would say well more than half of the properties that are listed for lease are not in good condition. So people are expecting you to pay more for properties that aren't worth it. You know? Again, Alex here and leasing assistants and leasing agents all over the city and all over the country are put in a situation to where one wrong number and you get a hold of someone who's not honest, like Alex is. They're not honest like Enterprise is, and they're able to take advantage of people. There was a news article that Richard had referred to before, and it was this a Craigslist scam, or was it it was Facebook Marketplace. So I like Facebook Marketplace. Sadly, I think Facebook Marketplace has already gone the way of Craigslist. There's a lot of unscrupulous people on Facebook Marketplace, and someone had been taken advantage of it just recently in the same way that this poor person was 13 years ago.
It's not Facebook itself, but the fact that there's unregulated freedom to post whatever you like and say pretty much whatever you like. Right. You can entice people in such a way. One of the things I'm interested to hear is, these scams aren't new. They're just in a different scope of how they're being placed in today's technological environment. When we had the person in the property all those years ago, what was the process at that point to gain the property back? How long did that take? What did you have to step through?
Well, so we called the police the same day that we discovered the man, and we told the homeowner. That homeowner is no longer with us. Unlike other interviews that we've had, that homeowner was looking really for a fast move. And so they actually owned the property for maybe all of 3 years. And then they got out. It just wasn't the type of investment they were looking for. So anyway, they weren't helpful. That homeowner wasn't helpful. So we called the police, and the police came out and they interviewed the man, and they walked back to a member of our staff who's still working with us, and they said, "I'm sorry, he has rights. I mean, like we can't prove that he is trespassing. He has a lease. He's got money order receipts where he's shown that he's paid a security deposit. This man leased this property, or is at least under the impression that this lease is legitimate, and he's moved his furniture in. Like, we're not going to arrest him. We're not going to remove him. You have to go through the eviction process in order to remove this man from your property." So it was the one and only time in our company history where we had to go through the legal process to evict someone who had not signed a lease with us. So anyway, we went through the eviction process. He came to court. Again, another tearful. This is after his news expose or whatever, and came to court, told the judge everything, and the judge just looked across at him, and after having heard our testimony, said, I'm sorry, Mr. Such and such, you're going to have to leave, And so he had the 10 days, just like anybody else. By the time we got the house back, he had left. We didn't have to move anything out. But we did have to go through the typical eviction process in order to regain possession of the property.
And how many days would you say that entire process was from between when you realized someone was in the property to having it back in your possession?
We were newer at this business at the time, so honestly, we felt bad. I think that we probably consulted with 2 different attorneys before we filed for this man's eviction because, I mean, we were a news story. I mean, Enterprise hasn't been on the news since. We just want to do our business. We don't want to be on the news. So we were kind of concerned about public image and how that would look. But after a couple of days, we filed for the eviction. Typical eviction processes take between 4 to 6 weeks to work their way out. I think that Mr. I won't say his name, had a continuance, which granted him an additional 2 weeks from the initial setting. And then he did not show up to the second setting. He was already in the process of trying to move out. So that was a total of 6 weeks.
And how do you think that the current eviction status with the moratorium being in place, does that impact that? You know, if someone was duped into going into a home that was yours, and how would that affect your ability to have repossession?
So I have, first of all, during the year of COVID, that we're in our year anniversary, more or less, here in April, but we have not, thank God, had any issues with people moving in and squatting. I don't think, right, Alex? I mean,
not to my current knowledge, no. We haven't had any big issues.
Yeah, we've had some trespassers.
Yeah, it happens.
Right, exactly. But nobody who wanted to stay and was willing to put up a fight. Yeah.
Right.
So we've been very fortunate. Other property managers have had squatters, especially with properties that are not properly managed, properties that are not being monitored on a regular basis. Those houses will be very attractive to people that just need a place to get out of the cold. And by the way, we have had those in the past. To answer your question, Richard, theoretically, okay, during the CDC eviction moratorium, if somebody were to move in to a property and be squatting there and not be removable by the police, so basically that just means that the police make a decision, they're not going to arrest this person, okay? And so we're left to go to the courts. In that situation, under the eviction moratorium, it would have been challenging. The courts were closed. It wasn't that they just weren't hearing cases because of the moratorium. The court said, you know what, we're just not even going to be open. And that was due to COVID. Had nothing to do with the moratorium. Well, now that the courts are open again and they're hearing cases again, COVID has probably delayed evictions. I'm just going to venture a guess of 10 to 14 weeks for initial settings. So yes, if you want to talk about an absolute worst case scenario, this is it. You know, you go to show a house, somebody's living in there, the police won't arrest them, you file for their eviction, and then 4 months later, you know, the judge might grant you possession of the property. That's horrible. I can't even imagine. Thankfully, that hasn't happened yet.
And that's one of the reasons why you've built into your management practices checks and balances. And so you can have more eyes on the property. I know you have your inspector that goes out, you have Alex that's out leasing properties, and then other members of staff, and that gives you so many different pairs of eyes to be on all the properties. Things such as checking up on houses while out showing property, making sure yard signs are in the yard of houses that are presently vacant, the quarterly inspections that an inspector can review occupied properties, procedures to check up on properties during inclement weather, an example being your winterization process.
Yeah.
You know, you investigate, and, you know, if it's going to be cold, you go by and make sure that the heat's set to a certain amount and
right.
Faucets are dripping.
Hilariously, that is how we found a squatter last year in a property. We were doing dripping pipe checks. And this is very complicated. Lindsay and I actually touched on this in a previous podcast where we talked about winterization, why certain houses wouldn't be winterized prior to a major winter storm. And so there was this one particular property. It fell into a category of properties that weren't going to be winterized prior to the storm. So in those situations, agents and assistants go and we check and verify that these properties have heat, that faucets are dripping, cabinet doors are open, and that the properties are secure. And so I drove up to this one property and walked in last year and smelt food cooking. And of course, immediately I'm thinking, am I having a stroke? You know, like what's happening? I shouldn't be walking into a vacant property and smelling food. And so I looked around, quickly saw somebody's personal effects on the ground. It was very messy. Walked into the kitchen and there was a pot that was actively sitting on the stove cooking. And I said hello, and I didn't hear anybody. I said hola, didn't hear anybody. Buenas noches, didn't hear anybody. Nobody commented back. And so, and I looked down the hallway and saw several doors shut. Immediately turned around, walked outside, shut the door, locked the door, and called the police. And I said, I called 911. I said, I'm sitting right here. I'll stay here until you get here. There is a squatter in this property. And so the police came, of course. I was able to open the door so they didn't have to kick it in. And between the time that I'd called the police and the time that they got there, the person had escaped out a window in the back of the house. We were able to find, because of the winter storm, we were able to find this individual inside of the property, and we secured the windows, secured the locks, cleaned up the property, and there you go.
What had they been cooking on the stove?
A hot dog. They were boiling hot dogs in water.
Yeah? You poach hot dogs?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Did you try them? Were they good?
No.
You missed out on an opportunity there.
But
that was free hot dogs.
That's disgusting. I mean, and the amount of time that it took for us to clean up the house after that person was there. So again, for the listener, we can't always control what happens in a vacant property.
Yeah, we
Alex,
can do our best.
You've seen all kinds of stuff, not individuals always, but you've seen some other things just in your day-to-day business, right?
Yeah, people come in breaking in through windows or yanking off the security bars sometimes, depending on the property, and just going through and trying to take what they can. And it's just people are out of desperation, I assume, just trying to do what they need to do. But in the long term, it affects us and other people, on a day-to-day basis. It delays us getting a property ready and getting it rented, which delays the homeowner getting a new tenant. And it's just a big cause and effect, domino effect of things that delay, and it's inconvenient.
Right. But the good news I think about how we do business is we do believe in people over systems. And so there are a lot of companies that are out there that just want to have this sort of hands-off type of internet system to show property. They have these smart lock boxes, which I'm not opposed to smart lock boxes, but to put that in place of a physical human being, showing the property, putting their eyes on the home, making sure that the house is secure, making sure that there is a sign in the yard. I mean, what you do for us has huge value.
Oh, absolutely. I get comments all the time like, it's so nice to meet an actual person here. Y'all are very much hands-on, and we like that. We get compliments on having a person there and having that interaction, because it helps create that connection with someone so they feel more comfortable renting through us.
Right.
I think that's a good quality, because a lot of companies, even the bigger ones who have good reputations, they don't always offer that kind of assistance.
Right. Or they just have really people that aren't very good at making connection.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's so many different ways that from your organization, you're out and about in the community, and you get to look at the properties to see what's going on with them, and anything that doesn't look right, you're able to take action and investigate further.
So there was one other question that I wanted to ask Alex before we, ended the segment, and that is that, Richard, you had asked how we responded, when we found this gentleman had moved his family into this property. So the answer to your question is, one of those responses was that we stopped Craigslist advertising, and we don't market on Facebook Marketplace. Those are two marketplaces where we feel like ads can be easily created, easily, manipulated. If their pictures are already on Craigslist, people will often just take those pictures off of Craigslist, create their own listing, and then now they're conning money out of people. So we don't advertise on those two places. That's one response. We have our own website, which on top of being the producer for this for this podcast, you're also the creator, content creator, and have created the infrastructure and all the SEO and marketing for our websites, mymemphisrental.com, propertymanagementmemphis.com, epmrealestate.com. These are all websites that you've created for us.
I'm definitely guilty of that.
Well, and one of the things that we've experienced just over the 20 years that we have been in business is our public credibility has been increased and strengthened through the fact that people are not only able to see our properties on Zillow, which is a phenomenal platform. We pay to be on Zillow, costs money, and then they're able to see the exact same pictures, Alex, which you post on our website.
Correct.
So even though we've set up all these protections, what are some of the cons that you're seeing now? Not necessarily out with other properties, but even with applicants. Like, what's happening now in 2021?
So a couple weeks ago, I would say. One of our Zillow ads was in question because our information was set there, but then underneath there was like a comment section, and someone had put in, contact me here at this number to view this property and to rent this property. And it was like, and I saw the number was still there. I researched it, looked into it, and their information was still there. I reported it by Zillow and everything like that. But even with, like you said, all those protections and barriers we try to put up to protect our own properties, there are always those little loopholes people try to find to be able to scam those people. Right. They're thinking it's one of our agents that's putting the number there, and they're trying to contact that number. But luckily, we got somebody who was, in question enough to where they didn't believe it fully and wanted to call the other number that we had listed actually on the listing, which, helped me report that and get it taken care of.
Right. So you're having to be always vigilant.
Oh, absolutely. We got to be on the top of our game when it comes to these type of things. And as soon as it's up and noticed, we need to be able to take care of it and report it as soon as possible.
Right.
One of the difficulties as well is visual things are not easy to track on the internet. So in many cases, they're not even using the property address when they're posting a scam. They're posting pictures of the property.
Right.
In some cases, I've seen scams where someone has cropped a picture from Google Street Level, and that's the only picture they have, a kind of very poor front elevation of the property. So even with all the alerts that we have out on our property addresses and trying to track where our properties are being posted, we can't always see the anonymous ones that are out there. And that's why it continues to be a problem. And therefore, all the practices that you've now put in place in how you do business help to mitigate that and reduce the risk greatly.
Absolutely. There's one other thing that I think is really interesting, and sitting across from you, Richard, all the listeners can hear that you were most likely not born in the United States.
Yeah, I'm actually from the UK, and I've been living in the United States for about 22 years.
So you're from the UK. You're living in the United States now, American citizen.
That's right.
Fantastic. Love it. But it proves a point that not like right here in Memphis, Tennessee, it could be anywhere in America, in a city that it seems so small, so local. To the renters, we would like to say, you're going to be calling long distance phone numbers to see a property, that is right down the street from where you live, right? So like here in Memphis, our area code is 901. There are so many foreign investor owned properties now, and groups that are out of different cities that are managing property here in Memphis. We used to say, well, if it's not a 901 area code, then you shouldn't call it, that's got to be a scam or something like that. Well, no, that's not the case anymore. You're calling all over the country and honestly all over the world. You're calling 1-800 numbers often with these new marketing services that are out there. So yeah, what used to be the easy ways of guessing as to whether or not the marketing, the listing that you were looking at was legitimate, those ways are gone. You're going to be speaking to people that don't sound like somebody who lives here in Memphis, Tennessee, or even in the Midwest. And yeah, you're going to be doing business over the phone and by the internet. One of the things I see Alex do all the time, he's not only meeting clients at the properties, but they're coming to our physical office. And so, we have something here with Enterprise that is quickly vanishing. There's still a place for you to come and visit with us and to ask us your questions. People bring their rent in to our office, even during COVID, and we've put up barriers to help protect people and their health in that situation. But to the renter, if you can find somewhere that has physical human beings that are working for them and an office location, so you're not just mailing your rent to somewhere far off, try to find that local presence, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Makes you feel more comfortable that you can actually see the people, see the company, be in the physical location, and know that you're paying something legitimate.
Yeah.
It's interesting as well that you mentioned phone numbers, because with caller ID spoofing, which is extremely easy to do,
right?
I appreciate that it makes it convenient for many business applications, but there is the fraud aspect of it that makes it just too easy.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, Richard, I want to thank you for bringing that up and for talking to us about the rental scams. Again, the key here about Enterprise Property Management is that we are a licensed real estate brokerage. We have a business license to do business in the state of Tennessee. We have a long-term physical presence here. And so many of our tenants have told you, Alex, and they've told me as well, that they have a comfort in knowing that they're working with a legitimate property management company, a legitimate real estate brokerage. And so that's what we offer.
And now, Neighborhood Chat.
Now it's time for news of the strange but true, our favorite segment. Michael Boatman, 41, was discovered by 2 sheriff's deputies wandering down the street at 1 a.m. in Spartanburg, South Carolina, wearing only a clear bag over his genitals.
Wait, what? I'm sorry, I was distracted. Read that again. Wearing a clear bag over his
genitals. He was naked because we're not wearing collars anymore.
Okay. Gotcha.
He was doing the walk of shame because he had cheated on his wife.
And his wife made him do that?
I guess he just felt like he needed to pay penance. So he put a bag over his junk and went walking.
I would think divorce would be so much more less painful and less embarrassing. Holy crap.
And of course, as we always know, it turned out he had been smoking marijuana and meth.
Oh, well, that explains it. Okay. I knew there had to be another reason for that.
He tried to run away from the police, but he was detained with his clear bag and taken to jail.
They tell him to zip his Ziploc up. I don't even know what to say, Glenn. I don't know what to say.
April Fool's Day prank. Wichita, Kansas, April 1. Arnthea Willis, 58.
Arnthea?
Arnthea Willis, 58. Called her daughter that morning and said she'd been shot. So her daughter did what? Yeah. Mom called the daughter and said, I've been shot. And so, of course, the police department, the fire department, they all arrive at the house only to find out that she's not there. It was an April Fool's prank, and she's been arrested now.
Holy crap. Who would think that would be funny, to tell your kid you just got shot?
Well, apparently Arnthea Willis thought it was going to be funny.
You know what? Let me tell you something. I've done some April Fool's jokes. I put my buddy's car, brand new car. It only had 6 months. I put it in the paper for sale with his cell number and his work phone number. It was like a $40,000 car. I put it in there for $12,000. So the wife and I moved in Hawaii, must sell. It took him 2 months before I thought he was going to change his cell phone number. I thought he was going to have to. So I've done some pretty cruel things, but I would never call and say, Glenn, I've been shot. Call the police. That's crazy.
If I did that, then Brett would beat the piss out of me at some point.
I wouldn't do that. I'd feel I don't know what I would do. That's not a cool joke, though.
No, it's not. And my son did some April Fool's pranks on me. Like he filled my shoes with ice. But he did not tell me he'd been shot. Another story from the news of the strange but true. But I want to call out my producer, Richard. Richard is from the United Kingdom, which is not quite as united as it used to be.
No. He's proud of it, too.
And no different than
That's
America. Nobody likes us anymore. That's the one thing we have together with our UK brethren is nobody likes us.
Yeah.
Now, Richard, there's plenty of actors that come from across the pond to work in America, and they want to make movies, so they drop the British accent. Have you ever dropped it? Can you sound like a Southerner? No, I don't think.
Well, you know what, though? When I watch movies, this has happened to me a lot. And you see a fairly new actor, and it's a great movie, and then all of a sudden you see him on like E.T., and they got this bizarre accent. You're like, who the hell is this guy? And it changes their personality, right? Like all of a sudden the badass you thought he was is this little wimpy, cross the pond kind of guy.
Is that what you think of our folks from the UK?
No, I was just digging at Richard. Anyway, so what? Go ahead and dig on him. Let's hear the joke.
James Harvey of Romford, England, has been fined $3,800 after his East London council received 150 complaints from neighbors about his karaoke parties. It's been a nightmare, said one neighbor. It was loud and his singing was terrible. Noise officers. We don't have noise officers.
We do.
Do we?
I had one called on me for a Halloween party one year. Remember, we ended up helping him.
Yes, I do remember that. We do have noise officers. He was doing covers of Dire Straits' Sultans of Swing and Kenny Rogers.
Wow.
And Dolly Parton's Islands in the Stream. Harvey, who said he would appeal the fine, defended his voice, and he said, I admit I'm no singer, but I have a go. And I have a couple people over, and they loved it all.
They were on drugs, too. I bet he was giving them free weed or something. I want to move into a topic that I've been dealing with here lately. Back in the crash, we have a number of investors, or even homeowners.
The Great Recession?
The Great Recession.
Of 08.
That had to leave their homes for jobs, so they turned them into rentals, or they purchased homes for pennies on a dollar because they were in foreclosure. Mainly, let's take Cordova as an example. I'm dealing with one right now. It is over in the East Memphis area. So this investor, I'll just give you the scenario and then it'll kind of make sense. So this investor decides they want to sell. They've owned the house 10 years. It's gone up significantly in value, almost $90,000 in value versus what they purchased it for.
Yeah.
So they want to sell, but the problem is they have a tenant that's going to be in there until November of 2021. So they contacted me, and as we were talking, they're like, well, I'd like for you to just go ahead and evaluate the house and let's put it on the market in November. I'll put the brakes on right there. I said, listen, right now, inventory's low, market's hot. Everybody's paying over asking for anything that hits the market, and it's gone in a day. I said, if you wait until November, that's going to end, and you're not going to have the advantage of the hot buying season. So the number I'm giving you today could shrink because as we have more inventory than buyers, property values and purchase prices are going to level back to what they should be.
And that's because most people that are owner occupants, they want to purchase in no later than July to get their kids into school in August.
Right.
And so that part of the market tends to level off or cool off in August or later, which then gives investors a greater opportunity
to buy.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, here's a solution. I've done this 4, 5, 6 times now. So what I've been able to do is I've contacted the property owner and told them, here's what your current value is. If we go to owner-occupant sale, here's what you're probably going to sell it for, but you're going to get over asking prices. Here's your net. They like those numbers, but there's one big problem. There's a tenant still sitting in the house until November. So what I'm able to do, and anybody can do this, and if you're an investor looking to sell because your property's at the top of market, consider this idea. Get your real estate agent. If it's not me and Glenn, then get an agent.
Why would it not be me
I don't know.
Or you?
Not everybody's smart. I'm just saying. Go to the tenant and basically offer them an early buyout. And here's what I've done on every single situation, and it's worked out perfectly. I go to the tenant and say, listen, the owner wants to sell. Do you want to buy? Well, how much do you want for the house? In this case, $215,000. The guy says no. Number one, he's 83 years old and doesn't want to buy another house. I think he just wants to move into a smaller place, manageable place. So he doesn't want to buy. So we get that out of the way. Say, okay, well, here's the thing. We'd like to ask you to vacate your lease early with 0 repercussions. Both you and the seller will vacate the lease, and in exchange, let's say your move-out date's going to be May 31st. Your entire month of May is free of charge. That's $1,150 he's not going to have to spend. And once you move out, we will, as long as you broom sweep the house, don't leave a bunch of junk and trash in the house, we'll give you your security deposit back, no questions asked. Granted, we go in there and it's not just completely torn apart.
If you haven't torn it up, then
right. So to him, he's going to pick up $2,050 in 30 days for simply agreeing to move out 5 or 6 months early.
Yeah. So
he's like, yeah, absolutely, I'll do it. So listen, there's a simple solution to this. There's no law that says you and that tenant can't vacate that contract and that lease. Now, if the tenant says absolutely not, I'm not moving, I don't want to move, then you can sweeten the pie and say, look, I'll give you, your deposit plus $1,000 plus a free month's rent, whatever it takes. Because in order for these folks to get that $85,000, $90,000 profit, I told them you're going to have to invest some money into the deal and buy this tenant out.
Yeah.
Give them something that's worth moving for. So there's an easy way to make it happen. Just tread lightly. You don't want to upset the tenant. You don't want them to think that you're trying to kick them out. Or you're going to try to evict them. You just want to let them know, look, I'd like to sell the house. Do you want to buy it? Start the conversation that way.
Well, and most tenants don't understand what their rights are.
No.
And I always try to educate them when I go see them. In fact, yesterday, I went and looked at a property to do a market analysis on the value of the property. And when I went and talked to the tenant, the first thing they say is, are they going to sell? They're going to kick us out? I'm like, no. Because even if you purchase a property that has a tenant with a lease, you are accepting responsibility for that lease. And so you can't just kick them out. So I always tell tenants, you have rights. You have the right to the quiet enjoyment of the property, and they can't cancel your lease just because the property sells. So if you have a property that you want the tenant to be gone from, then you just have to work. It's a business deal.
Right.
You have to say, what is it that I can do for you so that I can get this property vacant? And if that means giving them a couple of months of free rent, that's what you got to do.
Well, it's worth your time. If you're gonna if you have a choice to make $80,000 today, this in the next 3 months, 4 months, versus only making $65 because you waited till the fall. What's your choice? Are you willing to invest $2,000 or $3,000 into getting the tenant out, getting the house market ready, and going to market? Well, absolutely, you should be. So it's a simple solution. It's doable. It's not rocket science, but I think when I was listening to a couple of conversations of investors talking about wanting to sell, but I've got a tenant, there's a tenant there till 2022, they're just sitting there thinking their hands are tied. And now they're afraid that once this lease expires, the market's going to have changed, the value is going to go back down, and they miss the opportunity to take advantage of the market height and where it's at right now.
So the best thing that folks can do in that case is call us.
Sure. Give us a call. EPMrealestate.com. Just call us. I'm not giving my cell phone number out. If you want my cell number, just go on there and
I'll give mine out all day long.
I'm not. You're not me.
Go to EPMrealestate.com. You will find our cell phone numbers there. You can call us anytime, day or night. We're there to assist our property owners and investors.
Thank you for listening to Behind the Curtain podcast, your real-world guide to real estate investment and property management. Be sure to subscribe at BehindTheCurtainPodcast.com. And if you'd like to learn more about Enterprise Property Management's real estate services, please visit us on the web at EPMRealestate.com. This has been a Sound Ideas Group production for Enterprise Property Management, Inc.